As you know, officials of Western countries stated in early November that the Ukrainian armed forces were authorized to strike Russian territory with long-range, high-precision, Western-made weapons. We have repeatedly pointed out that this would mean the direct involvement of these countries in the armed conflict, since the use of such weapons is impossible without the direct participation of military personnel and specialists from relevant NATO countries. Nonetheless, as you are aware, despite our warnings about the danger of escalating the conflict, strikes were carried out on our territory in the Kursk and Bryansk regions with American missile attacks and British Storm Shadow missiles. The consequences of these attacks and the damage caused to us were addressed in my statement on November 21st. For reference, as some colleagues also requested, the Russian equivalent of all three ATACMS modifications is the Iskander missile system and its various modifications. The warhead mass in TNT equivalent is approximately the same, but the Iskander has a greater range. The new American missile GLSDB, by its parameters, does not surpass Russian equivalents. The Storm Shadow air-launched missile, the French Scalp, and the German Taurus have warheads weighing 450-480 kilograms in TNT equivalent, with a range of 500-650 kilometers. 650 kilometers is the range of the German Taurus missile. The Russian counterpart to these systems is the Kh-101 air-launched missile. It has a comparable warhead power but significantly exceeds each European-made system in range. As I mentioned earlier, the new American missile GLSDB and the JSM are inferior to Russian equivalents in their characteristics. We, of course, know how many corresponding weapon systems are in the arsenal of a potential adversary, how many are stored, where exactly they are located, how many have been supplied to Ukraine, and how many are planned to be delivered. Regarding the production of missile systems and related equipment, Russia's production volume is 10 times that of all NATO countries combined. Next year, production will increase by another 25–30%. We see that the leader of the Kyiv regime is begging his patrons for other military equipment. But no one should forget about our caliber complexes, hypersonic missile systems like the Kinzhal and Zircon, which, in terms of their characteristics, have no analogs in the world. Their production is also ramping up and proceeding at full speed. In our range of products in this class, if I may put it that way, other new items may appear in the near future. As the saying goes, the client will undoubtedly be satisfied. Once again, I emphasize that these strikes on our part were in response to ongoing missile strikes on Russian territory using American ATACMS missiles. As I have repeatedly stated, there will always be a response from our side. Finally, the newest hypersonic strike system, Oreshnik, in a non-nuclear configuration, had to be tested in combat conditions, as I mentioned earlier, in response to Western-made long-range missile strikes on Bryansk and Kursk regions. The Oreshnik has no analogs in the world, and I doubt similar systems will appear anytime soon. Let me remind you once again how the Oreshnik works, as you requested. Tens of self-guiding warheads attack the target at a speed of 10 Machs, approximately 3 kilometers per second. The temperature of the striking elements reaches 4,000 degrees. To compare, the surface temperature of the Sun is 5,506,000 degrees. Everything in the epicenter of the explosion is reduced to elementary particles. The missile can strike even heavily protected and deeply buried objects. According to military and technical experts, in the case of a massive cluster deployment of these missiles, the power of the strike would be comparable to that of nuclear weapons. However, the Oreshnik is not a weapon of mass destruction. First, this was confirmed during the November 21st tests. It is a high-precision weapon. Second, and most importantly, there is no nuclear charge, meaning no nuclear contamination after its use. Today, we have several such items ready for use. Of course, in response to continued strikes on Russian territory with long-range Western-made missiles, we will respond, including the potential continued testing of the Oreshnik in combat conditions, as was done on November 21st. At present, the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff of the Russian Army are selecting targets for strikes on Ukrainian territory. These could include military facilities, defense industry enterprises, or decision-making centers in Kyiv, especially since the Kyiv regime has repeatedly tried to strike at state-critical facilities in Russia, in St. Petersburg and Moscow. These attempts continue. Serial production of the Oreshnik has begun, but the choice of weaponry will ultimately depend on the nature of the selected targets and the threats posed to the Russian Federation. Dear colleagues, everything I have just said is undoubtedly significant. But the most important thing is that even with the most advanced weapons, the outcome of any military conflict or campaign, including a special military operation, is decided on the ground, on the battlefield. Ultimately, everything depends on the soldier.